largest RPA event even. Okay, this meeting is getting recorded. Thanks, Vibhor. So yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen DevCon Land, you must visit. It is the biggest RPA event in the world with more than 13 hours of content, in-depth technical sessions that you shouldn't miss. We had over 20,000 people coming on to DevCon Land within the first 2 days, and so many number of thousands of people still watching the content on demand. Uh, there was this huge feedback of overwhelming feedback of getting this interaction, one-to-one interaction, and that's the reason we are trying to facilitate these. And I'm really happy that so many product and engineering folks could join us today. So without further ado, let us start with augmenting human workers. RPA was considered to be something which is replacing, just imitating human redundant tasks. It's much more than that, right? It's not only an unattended robot which just schedule at 7 in the morning and it works. In reality, it's much more complex. You need to interact, you need to talk to that, you need to have handover between the task to complete an end-to-end process. So on that, what would you do? You need forms, you need action center, you need human in the loop. And we have Liji and Amol today who are going to take you through some of the key features that you must know, and then we will open the floor for questions. You can keep writing your questions in the chat box and we will pick it up as soon as possible. Over to you, Liji.
Oh, thanks, Tejas. I think pretty much you gave the right intro. I don't have to speak anything on the slide, right? That's exactly what it is. So I'm sure all of us or all of you are busy in full swing mode automating processes. And I'm sure at some point in time, end-to-end process automation means bringing the humans or business users along with the digital workers. And that's exactly what Human in the Loop or Action Center product brings in. I'm sure this is kind of available in GA from last at least 3 to 4 quarters. So actions, it's an activity pack that's available, which facilitates transfer of data between human unattended robots and human at multiple stages of a workflow. And now what's new? What we introduced new is we worked on the feedback that we heard, which said that, yes, human in the loop is important, but what we missed today is business users initiating unattended processes like back office executions with some business input, right? So it could be a file upload, it could be a bunch of form data, and that's something that we have added to or included into the Action Center product offering. So now it completes the loop, human in the beginning and human in the loop, interacting with back office automations, or what we call as the unattended automations. Because for attended scenarios, we do have a comprehensive solution today, right? So what's missing, what the gaps that we identified was more around the unattended automation. And the framework we introduced also allows you to monitor a long-running workflow, because the moment you bring in humans to the loop, eventually the workflow becomes, or the process execution becomes long-running, because there is no definite start or end to when human comes in, right? So which means that your robot could do something else meanwhile. So pretty much that's what the long-running workflow framework means. And then actions are one such long-running activity. So now with UiPath, you could literally model an end-to-end business process, have multiple handoffs, and then also monitor them end-to-end. So again, these are some example scenarios. If you have been actively working with our document understanding and AI family of solutions, you would have realized the importance of retraining the models, validating the extracted content, and so on. So that's like one of the important use cases where human validation is required. It also could be for some auditing scenarios, some kind of approval scenarios like this, where a simple sales code, and based on specific country specific rules, you would need multiple approvers. So the point I want to drive here is that since we have built a platform and what we have provided the solution is embedded into our platform, it works well with the paradigms of activities and studios or process designer. You could really design your process like having the rules embedded into your workflow, things like, oh, I have 5 actions and probably I need 3 out of 5 approvals before proceeding to the next step, right? All such kind of rules could be built into the RPA workflow now, right? And I think PO or non-PO based invoice processing, it's like a well-known industry process. And now with just UiPath platform, you could now model that end-to-end. Probably previously you would need to bring in some third-party tools. Of course, we work with partners. So I just want to ensure that we bring that out. So if a customer has partner solutions, which actually gives this capability, of course, we work with the partners. But if there are customers who are looking for an end-to-end automation just for the UiPath platform, that should be possible with actions, activities, persistence activities, as we call, and through Action Center for Human Interface. So I will quickly shift to Studio because we have the whole developer fraternity here. So I'm going to just touch upon few of the frequently asked questions that I've heard, and then probably open for questions, right? So when we released in 1910 Actions, the only way of building workflows was through a template called the orchestration process template, right? This is the template. But we heard the feedback that we would need to use this activities in other existing processes. It need not be an orchestration process. So it's as simple as open the project settings and then just enable support persistence. And then you should be able to now use persistence activities in any process available. And of course, we also have shipped a bunch of snippets. So feel free to look at snippets and under the category orchestration, you will see some example, sample code that you could readily use. Another frequently asked or aspect that we have heard is assignment of actions from the workflow. So I'm kind of assuming that most of us here have a fair idea about building a workflow using persistence activities, but just in case you haven't explored it, if you install UiPath persistence activities, there is a new category, long running, and under that you have a bunch of activities. And if you want to bring human into the loop, you should use these activities as well as part of document understanding activity pack. We do have out-of-the-box integrations with document validation station. So that's another bunch of activities that's available, right? So now what I would like to drive here is what am I trying to do? Yes. So what I'm trying to drive here is how do we look at a workflow which actually creates multiple tasks and then assigns that to users, right? So that's what I'm trying to do. Let me try to get rid of this part. Talk. Okay, so let me show you this workflow, right? So here, what I'm doing is, this is a part of an overall document extraction workflow, but I'm focusing more on the actions part. So I have a bunch of documents in a folder, and this workflow is scanning through the folder and based on some basic classification, it's going to create an invoice approval or claim approval, right? So the point here is you could create multiple actions from the same workflow, but there are certain things that that needs attention. One, the moment you create a task doesn't mean that it kind of suspends the workflow, right? Because creation of task just means that it creates it creates an action, right? At any point in time in the workflow where you think that all your transactions are processed and you cannot really proceed after this point without human interaction, that's when you would use the paired activity, which is for wait for task and resume. And at this point of time, the workflow goes into a suspended state and it frees up the robot. That's the important part, right? So your robot is freed up, and then as and when the user comes and performs an action, it resumes a workflow. So you could create multiple actions in a workflow, but ensure to use the paired activities in a way that, for example, I just kind of created an invoice task and then I do a wait for task in a loop, which means that it would suspend the workflow at that point. And that might not be the ideal thing that you would like to do. So that's one aspect. Another thing is assignment. So we have this assign activity, if you would see, right? There is an assign task activity, which can be used in case of you would like to assign the task directly from the workflows. This is an addition we have done post as part of 20.4, and that's one part. Now, let me not, I was planning to execute this workflow, but I'm sure that most of you, would have tried out these aspects. Quickly going to some of the forms enhancements we have done. I'm sure a lot of us are trying to build nice, I would say more interactive forms, more complex forms to help business users have a very compact view. So we have introduced dynamic drop-down support, which means that right from the workflow, you could send some data to the form. All you need to do is to use some certain keyword. For example, in this case, if I look at, country list or drop down, you could pass an array and then pass a country list. Similarly, you could also define a dependency drop down, right? So 2 levels of drop down. So based on a country selection, you would like to populate another drop down with a bunch of states, that's possible, right? So I'm sure it's going to help you to build some richer forms. And another thing that we have introduced is the storage buckets based for images. So if you look at before 20.4, the only way of embedding images within a form used to be base64 encoder format, and which really makes the actions bulkier and less performant. And now we are working well with the storage buckets feature. So a robot can just upload images into a storage bucket. So these are standard storage bucket API activities available as part of the system package. And then you could just provide the storage, the specific data, the uploaded storage variables into the form, and all you need to do is map that to an HTML content. Right, so HTML, you could just drag drop in HTML content, and then you could just provide, something like this, right? You can refer to the image source as data.doc1_storage. This is the attribute that contains storage, and then just refer to as data.storage, and that's going to now at runtime pull up the image from the storage bucket and render for the end user. So these are some of the features that we have introduced in actions. Now, just to wind up my, I would say, talking, I just mentioned that users can trigger unattended processes, and I just want to quickly show you that aspect, right? So we have introduced processes. This is the new revamped action center, if you would look at. So previously you would have seen actions appearing within orchestrator, and we heard the feedback that for business users to come and work, it needs to be more tailored. So we introduced a total new application, actions and processes, available right there in Automation Cloud. This will be available on-prem as well in future. And this is as simple as Gmail. That's what we are trying to, email, that's what we are trying to build, right? So it should be, it should not really require any training. People should just come in, see their task in their order, and then just perform. Now, yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, was that something for me?
No, not Lizzie. I
Okay.
think.
Okay. Yeah, so just 2 minutes on processes. Now business users can see a bunch of processes that are assigned to them. These are unattended processes assigned to them by the admin. And the beauty is that once they run process, it can actually bring up a form which is required. For example, each these form fields differ if you have observed, right? So this is on the relocation fields. If you look at it, can have a bunch of uh, validations built in, and as well as if you look at this is more like a sales code approval. Now, how do we do it? The important thing is there is no development as such required. It's quite easy for you to light this scenario up. All you would need is bunch of input arguments for your workflow in case you're using a process. For example, this process has a bunch of input arguments, and this is what we auto-generate a form based on, right? So it supports all the primitive data types. In future, right after this sprint, you will also see in this form, a user will be able to just drag and drop a file, for example, any kind of file, and say trigger a process, right? So it's that easy for business users to upload a file or provide some business input and trigger a unattended robot. And this is through processes. And we are using in case of queues. So there are two ways that unattended robots can be triggered, right? It's through queues as well as it's through job. So job, it's as simple, provide the process arguments, that's it, right? In case of queues, what we have tried doing is that we use this little property called schema, right? So if you would like your end users to provide you with some business input through the Action Center portal, just upload a specific data JSON schema. I'm sure most of you will be familiar with how the schema looks like. This is standard, available, documented, right? So it has a nice schema. It can give you some default values. It can have some validations and so on. And once the schema is uploaded, Action Center takes care of bringing up a form based on that queue schema. As I mentioned, even file upload possibility will be possible to queues also. So I believe this is kind of a low-hanging fruit from our perspective, but the value it can bring for your end users to interface with unattended automation is quite, I would say, quite a lot, right? And this is an out-of-the-box way of onboarding business users. So human in the beginning, trigger a process, and then human in the loop at any point in time of your workflow. So I will pause at this point. And I just also wanted to kind of let you know that we have some best practices documented. It's already available. You could see this as some of, it's kind of a development, I would say, guidelines, I would say, for using persistence activities, but that would be worth looking at. And from an availability perspective, just to avoid any confusion, all these persistence activities package, actions interface with an orchestrator is well available for cloud and on-prem already from 1910 and through 20.4, all right, and will be available in 20.10 as well. As an additional, I would say, offering, we are bringing out a brand new Action Center tailored for business users, which is now in community preview. What I was just showing, it is in community preview, and we expect that to be available for GA on-prem and cloud end of this year. So I would pause at this point and take some questions, or probably take questions later, however the time looks like.
Yeah, I think this is a good intro, Liji. Thanks for that. One question before I actually look at the chat box is, could you please tell us a bit about how is the organization going to handle it? I mean, is Action Center going to be at process level, tenant level, modern folders? How's that organization and segregation could be?
So actions are available at a tenant level, right? But within a tenant, it's a folder scoped entity. So So if you look at when you create an action, that's a good point. If you create an action, you could actually mention the folder you would like to pass that to, right? So by default, it gets created in the current folder of the process, but scenarios where I want to assign an action to a different organization or a different department, right? You could use the orchestrator folder. So which means, for example, in this case, invoice approval goes into a payroll folder, and the users in that payroll folder only will have visibility to this action, right? Just that from an end user perspective, we have masked that, because for an end user, they really don't care about it's coming from payroll or finance, but it shows me all actions that relevant for me. So we give a cross folder view, but at the end, they are getting to see only actions from the folders they have access to, right?
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. And also it is important to have that cross folder ability, because it so happens that the robot would belong to one subgroup of a organization, say for example in this case of finance, where somebody else has to approve it. Mostly we need these in exceptions where my current organization unit or the head of that department is not able to sign that invoice. It needs an exceptional approval from maybe another level, next level, CXO level or somebody like that. So it's quite important to have that, even though it is strictly coupled to one, it should be able to push between processes.
And with modern folders, this makes it quite easier as well, because you don't have to assign robots to every folder. So your robot can remain in a folder and then just have the user permissions in different folders, right? So I think it gels well with our platform strategy.
Cool. Thanks for that. Now, if anybody has questions, you could please unmute yourself and ask questions to Liji and Amol.
Hi, actually, I have a question. Previously, in the Access Center, we were facing issue with that when we basically trying to create a task into the Access Center, and after the basically wait activity, that whatever the value we have passed, suppose if we have passed the file path at the time of action creation, we have passed the file path, so that value is going away, means that value is going to blank, and it is giving us the error. So is that resolved, or basically I have faced that issue.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I have basically raised that. Yeah.
Okay, so of course, that's not really intended if it was a bug. So we just want to clarify. So this is the way you pass the form data, right? This is, for example, this is a primitive bunch of data, right? So one thing to note is that if you have marked any of those attributes as in, out, or out, right? Which means you expect users to provide that input from the form. What happens is that right after wait activity or wait and resume, it is auto mapped. If you look at if amount was 1,000 earlier and the user changed to 800, right? Right after wait and resume, you could simply access this variable amount and you would see 800 reflecting. So that's something that we have ensured that, so that you don't have to do any kind of JSON handling, reading the task data, and so on. Okay, that's one thing. Yeah. So I would say that's kind of helps you, but otherwise it's really not intended that any of the data that you've passed onto the form gets kind of wiped out. But having said that, one thing is that if you have some workflow variables, data in a different scope, right, than this, because it's a long running workflow, right? So those resource constraints, that what resources will be available post your resumption, that has to be handled in the workflow. But within the form, it should be taken care. Anything marked as in, out, and out, the value will be automatically mapped back to the workflow. But watch out for the scenarios where you are expecting a workflow variable with some value before the workflow went into suspended state, and it's not in the scope of the current suspended activity, right? Anything in the scope of suspended activity, we ensure to kind of write the workflow context and get it back. But otherwise, it's kind of when you resume, you have to ensure the resource requirements of the robot is met, because it's a long running workflow. I know it's a different paradigm to what we were used to before, but I would say that's kind of one technical challenge that we have to handle in the workflow.
Yeah. And the second question I have in that basically I have tried to basically create the task creation into the separate workflow, not in the main main workflow,
Yeah.
just as
Yeah.
you have basically in the main file. So
Yeah.
that is I have got again that persistent error, that I persistent package, something that error I got
Yeah.
when I
Yeah.
basically trying to segregate. Yeah.
So yeah, the point is that yes, persistence points as we call, which is wait activities, right? These are the activities when we persist the workflow context into a central persistence store, and then we have to resume right from that point, right? So if you would like to use create a form task in any secondary or any secondary file, it really doesn't matter. But any wait for activities today is supported only in the main XAML, primarily because of the complexities of resumption that can happen, right? For example, if you are using a secondary file and from that you're invoking another workflow, and then probably the wait and resume is in the third level, it becomes very complicated technically for us to resume from the right step. And that's the reason any wait activities are supported in the main XAML, but any create can happen in any secondary workflow, but wait activities, these are the persistence points as we call, that is supported only in main XAML. And that's kind of
Yeah. Thank
documented.
you.
And yeah.
One more point I'd like to just add on here is the usage of create external task and wait for external task kind of activities. So Liji mentioned about existing solutions where customers have been using existing systems for task management on their end. In such cases, what you could do is you could always use your own system wherever you're doing your task management. But in your process, after you've created a task in that external system, you can always create a dummy pause point or a suspension point in your workflow, which means that it's going to create an external task in the UiPath system. And whenever that external task is completed, I mean, in that external system, you can always start this workflow again, and it will resume from wherever it had stopped. So basically, that's where you would want to use create external task. There is no UI interface for you to interact with for external task in UiPath. You can always use whatever you have externally and work with that external system.
Yeah, true that. Yeah. So from an external third-party tool, you could now resume or suspend a UiPath robot using these activities, because these are it's supported by APIs too. So through API integration as well, you could do that.
Cool. Thank you, Amol and Liji. Just before we wrap, I have one question which Amol has already answered, but it will be interesting to learn more about the timeout. Once a task is created in the orchestrator, how long would it stay? And then, is there any measure you could put the timeout?
Yeah. So today, I would say this is something in our, I would say, top in our backlog to have this SLAs and business metrics based resumption. But today, a way of doing it is using resume after delay. I would say this is kind of a stopgap, but it works, right? So resume after delay is like you're forced starting your workflow after some point in time. So if you use resume after delay in parallel with an action, wait for an action, which means if you're not getting a response from the user within that time frame, the workflow will resume automatically, and you can achieve that today. But in future, we will have a more, I would say, more sophisticated way of creating SLAs for actions, which means that it could be configurable outside workflow. Business can manage it, and then based on SLAs, there will be flagging or auto resumption, probably reassignments and actions and so on. That's a top backlog in our list. But if there are like scenarios where it's kind of today required, try exploring resume after delay along with wait for task.
Cool. That sounds great. Actually, till the time it is there in the product board, we know that sure it is going to come soon. And thanks for suggesting.
Yeah. And so the only call to action I have is, if you haven't seen Orchestration Process Academy course, I think our Academy's team has really tried a lot to give a nice scenario-based course. So I would suggest taking that course and giving some feedback. And also, we hope that in your organizations, you would continue to explore scenarios for onboarding business users through UiPath Action Center, specifically on end-to-end process automation. So we hope that you will be able to kind of realize a lot of process automations and give us feedback on what's kind of blocking so that we can address them. Thank you.
Thank you, Liji. Thank you, Amol. I'm sure people will get into the course. Now, moving on to the next one, AI Fabric. I am too much excited that I could now install AI Fabric on a single node, single machine. To talk more, we have Shankar and Shashank joining us. Shankar, over to you. We can't hear you if you are talking.
I was on mute. Okay, sorry. Yeah, it's audible, guys. Yeah.
The quote of 2020. I was.
Yeah, that's true. And I hope you are able to see the screen.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so I hope all of you are familiar with AI Fabric. If not, I would highly recommend to go over the presentation that was done in DevCon. That presentation talked us through the use case for AI Fabric. Why do we need it? Why did UiPath build it when there are so many AI platforms already available? And how customers can benefit in their AI journey from UiPath. And there is also an end-to-end presentation of how you can use an existing model, connect it with Studio, and have a human in the loop scenario and continuously update the model. So I would highly recommend for all of you to go through that, but I'm going to briefly touch upon the different high-level overview of why we need AI Fabric, and then go into what we have developed after DevCon, what we have done, and then what's coming also. Okay, so this, if you have been in the ML area for some time, we all know the typical ML operation challenges. I think there are a lot of tutorials and courses available online on how to build a model, right? So you can easily have some Python and R code and develop a model. But that's just a very tiny part of it, right? Once you build a model, there are rest of the things. How do you put into production, right? So that requires a lot of effort, and it requires cross-team collaboration between data scientists, DevOps, and software engineers. Right? If you see, these are the different steps how model has its journey. First is the use case identification and model building. So once you are done with it, then this typically happens on a data scientist machine or some cloud server, whatever the data scientist is using. And once you have the model, then you have to see how do you package the model, how do you deploy the model, right? Packaging a model, the model sizes can vary from few MBs to several gigs also. How do you package the model? How do you get it to the server, and how do you deploy it? And then once the model is deployed, how do you expose it, right? Once the model is deployed, how do you expose it to different software that needs to use the model? So this is where software engineers come in. They typically take the model and write some APIs or wrapper over the model, and then exposes it as an API for other software products to integrate. And this is just start, right? Now you have just put into production. After that, the whole journey begins on how the model continues the journey from production. So typically, if you take a model, you will not get it accurate first time, right? So model's accuracy improves as it gets used more and more. So how do you close this loop, right? So once you start using it in production, some prediction may be good, some prediction may not be good. So if the prediction is not good, or the prediction is not with high confidence, that is where we need to somehow give this feedback back to the model. So I think in the DevCon, there was a demo which Shashank did, where if the model is not able to predict, then you need to get a human involved, right? Get a human involved. Human is going to look at the model manually, the data manually, and predict the right value. And then that feedback is again going into the model, and retraining will happen, right? So if you see, there is a lot of effort and across different teams to actually get a model in production, continuously running and highly and leverage the value of AI in your day-to-day operations. So yeah, so the idea of AI fabric is like, as all of you know, like UiPath is a very RPA developer focused company, and most of the AI platforms we looked at were heavily focused on software engineers or data scientists. But we want to make AI, democratize AI to RPA developers, right? So they should just work in studio and have their familiar activity and able to consume AI. So that is primary driver for AI fabric, as I said before. So how do you insert AI into your workflows? Yeah, so once you have your models uploaded into AI fabric and you have deployed, then you will start seeing those models available in Studio. And from Studio, you can drag and drop the ML skill and select whichever model you want. And then your model then is part of the workflow. And as the workflow runs, your workflow is going to call the deployed ML skill to predict. And if the prediction is not with higher confidence, the model will say, give you the confidence back. And then you will involve human in the loop, which will go back to the task action center flow, which G explained before. And then again, the feedback comes to the model. You can retrain the model, and it's a continuous process that happens. Okay, and there is a beautiful demo of it in the DevCon. Take a look. And having said that, I want to now go over so what we have done after that. So after the DevCon was done, so we started with AI Fabric as a cloud product, and cloud was GA'd sometime back. But we also realized as a company, UiPath has a lot of on-premise customers, right? And even AI Fabric also, they want to deploy it on-prem. So we started with a single node AI Fabric cluster, where you can take the entire AI Fabric and get it working in one single node. And this is currently GA, and it is being tried and getting used by customers. And in single node, there are two variations. One is online, where you do your installation online and where you are connected to the internet. And the installation process typically downloads whatever it needs from the internet and then installs it. And recently we have a GA air gapped also, in which case the scenario is many of the customers do not want an internet connectivity. They want to install AI Fabric without internet connectivity and run it also. So in this case, customers just need to download one air gap bundle and then move it onto their network, and then everything runs offline. So both of these are available GA, that is single node. So single node is sufficient for smaller use cases, but as companies start using, deploying more and more models and training more and more scenarios, we need multi-node. So for multi-node, we started with Docker EE, which is a Docker Enterprise Edition, and then Azure Kubernetes Service AKS. So both of these are available in preview for customers to try it out, and will GA soon. So in the case of Docker EE, the customers are expected to have a Docker EE cluster, Kubernetes-based cluster, and then they can install AI Fabric into their cluster. And in the case of AKS, like we will take care of, you give the Azure subscription details, we will provision a AKS cluster, install AI Fabric with just a few clicks. And then another feature which is in preview is Data Manager. This is in preview on-prem and cloud. So I'm going to just show you how Data Manager works. Okay, so this is a typical the AI Fabric app, which you should all be familiar with. And if you notice, like data labeling is a new menu item here. It's not available for everyone yet. It's in private preview, so you have to go through our insider preview portal to get it enabled for your account. So once you go into data, and if you know, like data manager is something which was previously available as a standalone Docker, which required customers to bring up a new VM and install the DM Docker image. But now we have integrated this with the AI Fabric, and so the output of DM can readily be integrated into the pipeline. Okay, so you go to the data labeling and then you click on it and you can create a new data labeling session. And then you select a data set. Okay, once you do this. So right now, if you see it's deploying, it's going to take a few minutes. So we're not going, and once it deploys, it's going to be available. So I'm going to just, I have already deployed one. So I'm going to select the one. And if you see here, as soon as you launch the data manager, will be the same data manager which you will see when you install it on your on-premise with the DM container as well. So you have to do some settings for data manager to work. First is the OCR, and then you need to create some fields. Okay, and then you can import whatever documents you need. I'm going to just walk through, not with a lot of documents, but with a couple of documents on. Okay, you import. Okay, once you upload, then you will start seeing the documents. Then now you can say you created invoice ID field. Then you can go and tag here. What is the invoice ID field? Do the same for the other document. And then you can say export. So okay, looks like export is happening. It's not complete. So what happens is, like, after you export, when I created a data manager, I created a session. I created a data set. So the exported document will come and sit here. I can, this is not yet done, but this is how it will look. Whatever you exported here, it's going to come here, and then this can further be used in the training pipelines. When you create a pipeline, you will be able to select whatever data set that got exported from the data manager. So this is in preview. So we just previewed it 2-3 weeks back, and we are waiting for customers to try it out and give feedback. Okay, and then what's coming after this is, like, as AI Fabric is getting popular in on-prem, we have asked from several of the customers to get it deployed into different managed environments, Kubernetes. Some of them want to do OpenShift, some of them want EKS. So we will soon start supporting some of the most common managed K8 environments. Data labeling suite is something which is working on. So data labeling suite is an extension of data manager, where you will start seeing some more labeling tools similar to data manager that will start coming. When you click data labeling, what you saw is now just document understanding, but we'll soon get more data labeling tools also. AI marketplace, this is something which we wanted to develop, where partners can develop models put it in a marketplace and monetize it. And there are several usability improvements for understanding and troubleshooting ML pipeline. This, as I said, like developing a model is simpler, but running it and training it is a lot complex. And there are some difficulties now in our customers to understand what the model is doing, why it is taking time, what are the errors, how could I troubleshoot though. So this is something which we wanted to improve. And then we are also looking at if you want to build a community edition of AI Fabric for communities to try it out. So that depends on the asks from community, how strong the community wants to try a free version of AI Fabric, like a community version of Studio.
I think there's some definite interest in using the community edition, Shankar, because I mean, just looking at the number of ideas that we see on hackathons at various events such as these, people bring in a lot of ideas. However, there was one little challenge of not able to use AI Fabric as much as
I see. Yeah,
wanted to beyond their enterprise edition. So I think it will be a huge benefit for both community and us, because community will get to test their ideas, and two is that we will get floods and flood of feedback on the features that are needed.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. This is also on our roadmap for 2021. So awesome. That will happen. Yeah.
Great. If there are any questions, please drop that questions into the chat box. We will spend another minute or two in this topic. Meanwhile, could you, Shankar, could you explain how do somebody get into the insider program if somebody is interested to look into the previews?
Yeah, we have to go to the insider portal and then sign up for it.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah. And from where you can download instructions for Docker EE, AKS, and how to enable data manager in their account.
Sure.
Yeah.
Shashank has answered some questions here.
Yeah.
One has put
inside. Yeah, Vibhor has put the login. Yeah.
Cool then. If there are no questions at the moment, I will pause this topic here and move on to the next topic. And if there are still questions, please drop that in the chat box and we will take it at the end. Okay, moving on. The next topic is on document understanding, what's improved since last time you spoke to Ivana, and we will take some questions on that. Ivana, over to you, please.
Thank you, Tejas, and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining this session. I will take this time to very shortly go through what are the changes between 20.4 and the upcoming LTS release, so that it's pretty clear as to what to expect, what to try out, and what we would love to have feedback on. Okay, I'm going to focus on the main, let's say, framework for document understanding, and I'm going to go through each and every one of the steps and let you guys know what is new incoming, what you should expect, what capabilities are extra over there. So for the taxonomy manager, the one thing that we are going to release very soon is the possibility of defining certain pieces of information that need to be extracted from documents, but are not actually found in the documents. Okay, so for these very specific cases, you will be able to define for a certain field that it does not require a reference, especially when being dealt with in the validation station. That's where the main impact is. In the digitization step, I think the most prominent development that happened in the past few months that I would like to stress out is the fact that we have published a public OCR contracts package that you can use in case you are working with any partners which are OCR providers to actually package up whatever services or whatever OCR methods they have and make them available in UiPath. And this is not only for document understanding. By using the public OCR contracts, you can build your own OCR engines that also work in screen scraping or work with the computer vision activity or wherever you need to use them. So I think this is really cool. This is definitely a very, very advanced topic, but you might end up discussing with a company at some point that is already using like a local vendor. Like we've, for example, had discussions with some partners in China who wanted to use Baidu OCR because Baidu is offering an OCR engine, right? And it wasn't integrated and usable in UiPath. So we said, okay, let us work on this. It was on the roadmap. And now we can clearly state, okay, if Baidu wants to build an OCR engine, they can do it, they know how to do it, and UiPath is going to accept it in all the scopes that need OCR. Okay. On the classification side, you are probably aware of the fact that there is one new classifier out there called Intelligent Keyword Classifier. This classifier it comes as a second option next to the keyword-based classifier. And what is really cool about it is that it knows how to take a file and split it into multiple separate document types. Like if you have, for example, if you have, I don't know, an insurance package, which is a 150-page PDF that contains a contract, a statement, an income something, an IRS form, something else, whatever it can contain, right? You need to get data from each and every instance of these, right, separately, because what you get from an IRS form is very clear. You might sometimes get it in a file together with other things. Otherwise, you might get the files disparately, but they're for the same case, right? So in order to enable this classifier, you can train it both at design time as well as at runtime using this little box over here. Okay, and what is really cool about it is that it's capable of suggesting splits within such a bigger file, so that you can then handle each individual piece of that file independently for data extraction and validation. Okay, another thing that has been out there for a few months now is the classification validation station, if you will, which is a tool that very easily allows you to go through the pages of a file, review any classes and proposed splits of those documents, correct them, add new classes, delete some of the splits, whatever you need to do to make the data correct, right? And then go into data extraction being 100% confident that a human has had a look over this. I want to make one note here. If you do have a use case in which you have to split files and you don't have very clear business rules as to somehow validate that the splitting is correct, I totally recommend that you use the classification station in the workflows, because if you have a wrong split and you're going ahead with it, you're going to get the wrong extraction, right? You might be missing a page of information. You might be having too many pages of information that get all processed as a single document type, and you get all your data kind of tangled up, right? And this is the really cool part, that all of this is within the UiPath environment, right? So you have robots, you have all the power of RPA at your disposal, and between classification and data validation, you can put whatever business rules you want. So for example, I don't know, if it's possible for you to get a medical record as part of a document of an incoming file, That's like a piece of it. And you know that those medical records always have, I don't know, 3 or 4 pages. You can check, okay, how big is this part that my classifier is returning? Is it in the right range? Is it in the right order, maybe? Whatever, you can do all kinds of business related checks, whether classification is correct or not. But still, this is what we recommend in case, and there's pretty many cases in which you don't have such clear business rules around it. Okay. For the training, as I was saying, the new thing is that the intelligent keyword classifier also has a training component. It learns on the fly. So with each and every document it gets trained on, it's going to perform better. Now, going to data extraction, you already know the extractors we have. You already know about the machine learning extractor and everything else. I would only like to draw attention to a couple of things which will enable this entire network of capabilities opened up by AI Fabric with the data manager integrated and with the default document understanding models out there. Okay. Please pay attention when next time you open a workflow with data extraction in it. Please pay attention that when you're configuring your extractors and that really complicated, let's say, wizard out there, there's an extra little box that appears for each and one of them. I'm going to show it to you guys, called framework alias. Okay. And this is some information. You can put any string in there, and it's something that will help the entire framework make connections between the data extraction step and the training step. And why this is important? Because when you design your processes, you do not always want to design your process as a single entity that contains all of this mumbo jumbo in here, right? You might need all of it, so you have to have it, but you don't necessarily want to put it all in one place, right? You might have, I don't know, a workflow that goes up to automatic data extraction, for example, right? And then you might have some other means of validating or doing something else. And then you might have another process picking it up and doing exporting, right? And in this case, it's not so obvious where the connection between the extractors and the trainers that work with them is. And this is the first step in actually enabling this. So in your extractor, you give it a key. If you want to train it, you give it the same key in the machine learning extractor trainer, and then this connection is done. Okay. This is also valid not only for the machine learning extractor. This is valid for any single extractor that you want to build. And this is another one of those advanced topics that I really love. And it's related to the fact that, of course, you might already know, you can build your own classifier, build your own extractor based on the public contracts that have been out there for like a year or so. We promise we're going to try to make them non-breaking. We have managed so far. So you can, wholeheartedly start working your magic for specific use cases, and it's just going to work. Okay. Building your own extractor is very useful in 2 cases. Let's say a customer wants to work only with a specific vendor of data extraction. Fine enough. Get the data from the vendor, figure out how you can actually perform data extraction. Okay, now wrap it using the public contracts that we have for document understanding. Just wrap it in an activity and plug it in the framework. It's that easy. And I do promise you it's very easy. I can send you a link to a public GitHub repo where we have like a dummy data extractor implemented in there that extracts some random data just to show you what building a custom extractor means. All right. In the validation, you already know the validation station. You went through quite a few, let's say, facelifts. It is pretty stable now. The same experience is available both for the classification as well as the data extraction validation screens as attended activities, as well as integrated in Action Center, and very, very soon to come in the Actions app that Ligi presented. Okay, so you have different means of validating data. You can do it as an attended activity for, let's say, simpler use cases in which a customer is okay waiting for a file to be read, classified, extracted if necessary, right? And then go to the validation step where something pops up. Or you can use the really cool feature that Ligi is driving with the long-running workflows and integrate this into Action Center, where you have the entire flow of control for actually, having task users perform the tasks in Orchestrator. So this is pretty much like the biggest things. Of course, all of this comes with support for cloud and coming up very soon on-prem, fully on-prem, for document understanding through the very graceful help of the AI Fabric team, who have been working with us pretty much continuously for the past months to make sure that you will be able to offer this to for installation to any of your customers. And yeah, I guess that's about it related strictly to the framework. I'm going to very shortly go through the roadmap for next year. There's only a couple of things that I would like to highlight over here. We're going to try to make it much easier for people to start building document understanding processes. This is one of our focuses, like main focuses. You probably know that we already have our own OCR engine called UiPath Document OCR, available in uipath.ocr.activities package. Feel free to use it. It currently works for English text, but we are going to expand the language palette that it can cover. We are going to publish a machine learning classifier and models. Also, those would be available in AI Fabric, and we'll have all the benefits of AI Fabric with model management, deployment, infrastructure management, and everything else. And one thing from the extraction thing that I'm really fond of, you already know we're working on a lot of machine learning stuff. So unstructured text is going to come up. But more, let's say, closer to rule-based scenarios, we're also going to focus and make available an anchor-based extraction algorithm. Okay, and this is going to cover quite a few use cases. So I hope you will be available to test it out and send us feedback on it when we publish it. All right, now, besides these, I don't want to take up too much time just discussing stuff that's not so technical. But there is one thing that I would like to point out as an issue that is recurring when using especially document understanding with long-running workflows. Please pay attention to variable scopes. In document understanding, usually, especially if documents are scanned, you don't usually have the benefit of, let's say, upfront processing through digitization and classification, maybe even data extraction, 100 files and then creating tasks, right? And this is because digitization takes a lot of time, especially if they're scanned, if they're very long documents, so on and so forth. So a lot of times the approach is to actually start directly in a parallel for each. Parallel for each, my documents, perform what you gotta perform, and then create tasks, and then wait for them, right? On like 100 branches. And that's really cool and extremely powerful. But please take care of your variables and keep them clean. If you have 2 branches that both write a variable called extraction result, you never know what you're gonna get, just like Tom Hanks was saying, right? So please be aware of this. So this is extremely important in parallel for H's. And other than that, I don't know. if you guys have any questions, if you have anything that things that you have seen that aren't aren't there yet, and you would really like to see them, that would unblock use cases for you, please feel free to use this time to have a short conversation about them. Yeah, and I'm gonna send the link to the public GitHub repo right away.
Great, and you could now unmute, ask questions. I know you have a lot of ask for Ivana. Ivana, I think people would want to see more types of data to be captured. Not only limited to invoices, maybe shipping documents, bill of landing. If you are talking about financial reports, annual reports, how do I, the list is long, but I will let the community speak for themselves.
All right, let me answer that first, because this is a really good point. It totally slipped my mind. Do notice that in AI Fabric, one of the packages under document understanding that you get, and this is really cool, is a generic document understanding package. Okay, so you can select or start from either one of the predefined packages, pre-trained packages, like for invoices, receipts, utility bills, whatever is out there and whatever else is coming. But there are a lot of cases that are very specific to your business. Okay, maybe it's about, I don't know, fashion stores, right? Maybe it's about stock, maybe it's about whatever. It can be anything, right? Now, the cool part is that if you use that generic model, you get the power of the same machine learning model, just ready for you to train it on whatever you want. The usage of the, yeah? Sorry, okay. I'm gonna keep going. I didn't understand. Okay. Okay, so basically the pre-trained models like invoices, receipts, and so on and so forth, just give you a starting point. Okay, you can use the pre-trained model to have something to start with, and then for your specific use case, you would retrain on top of it so that it becomes a little bit more biased to the types of documents that you see in your workflow, right? So it's actually gonna get better for your use case. Okay, if you start from the blank model, you get exactly the same power, but it can be any type of document. Like, for example, we don't have a bank statement model right now. But if you want to build one, it's right out there. Just start labeling your data, train your blank model, and you have it. But in the meanwhile, we are going to work on more and more pre-trained models. Just I wanted to make sure that you, our wonderful community, know about this possibility and will be able to take advantage of it from the get-go.
That helps, Ivan. I think one is the promise that you will give us more models. Two is that we have an immediate solution if there is a necessary be. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, actually, I also wanted to add to that there are a lot of goodies and really good models which we provide out of the box in AI Fabric. So before you build your own, probably many of these or some of this will be matter of your interest. If you try it out, probably you can use one of those before you actually build it yourself. So, and we'll keep on adding more and more models as we see more state-of-the-art stuff coming out in market, so that our community and our customers can benefit from that.
Cool. Sounds good, Shashank. Thanks. Any questions at all? Vibhor, can they unmute?
Yes. Guys, go ahead. You can unmute and ask any question if you have.
Hi, Yona. Saili here. So I had one question. You said that there would be a validation for the classifying documents. So how exactly it works? Like we know how validation station works when we extract the data, but how validation will work if we want to classify the particular keywords? Like there would be validation station or human interference, like how human will behave in those category.
Very good question. Let me share my screen. I just started a process that contains the classification station. I would like to, if you have patience, just in 30 seconds, I would show you how it looks like. Okay, so this is the classification station as an attended activity. It looks exactly the same in Action Center as well, right? So on the right-hand side, you have the document with all the words. You can navigate through the pages. You can search for specific keywords and everything that you can do in the Vision Station as well. And then over here, you can review what the classifier that I assigned for this use case can do, right? So you can look through and say, yep, this document looks good. This document looks good. Let's assume that it made a mistake, right? And let's say this page is the beginning of an invoice. Let's just say, okay, it's a random example, right? All you have to do is just go in here, you know, sorry, my screen is very, very small, and say, this is an invoice. Okay, this is pretty much all you have to do. Another thing you can do is select evidence for it. Sorry. Okay, I just selected a bunch of files. I added a reference for it. Okay. Oh, you can say, well, I kind of made a mistake because, or the system made another mistake because this page is actually part of this one. So all you have to do is just drag and drop it, right? So this is the classification station. You can move this around. You can just say these two pages, I don't even want to classify because they're not of any of the types I know, right? And this is pretty much what you can do in the classification station. It's very simple to navigate, very simple to review the classes. And once you do this, when it goes into data extraction, what I do and what is the recommended way to do it is, okay, you have this big file, but now the output of the classification is not one, but I don't know, 4 or 5 classes that each also contain the page ranges that they apply to. Okay, so in my workflow, let me actually go to it. Okay, I do digitization, I do classification, then I can come back a little bit to the classification if you are interested in the intelligent keyword classifier specifically. Okay, I'm also going to train my classifier as you see here. Okay, and then in data extraction, for one file, I actually go into a for each. If you remember, before the intelligent keyword classifier, we didn't have the capability of splitting a file into multiple classes. Okay, so for this reason, we also, instead of this for each, we always had an if. If I have a classification, then I go into data extraction. Now you don't need to have an if in there. You actually have a for each, because for each piece of the document that I have classified and validated, I do data extraction. And the data extraction is actually going to be applied only to the right page ranges for each instance. Okay, because this information is available in the output of the classification. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, yes, totally. Thank you.
All right. Any, I don't think I was so clear that there's no more questions.
It could also be for the fact that in 5 minutes from now there's a cricket match starting, so I think people are almost getting ready for that. The only excitement for the year is IPL.
All right. So if
please go on.
just as a closing note, there's a document understanding course that was published about a month ago, I think. It covers the entire framework. We're going to update it with the 20.10 updates. Give it a try. It might help, not you, because you guys already know this, but it might help your colleagues or your partners, or maybe even the business users to understand, what document understanding means and consists of. Give it a try and send us any feedback. All feedback is welcome.
Great. Thanks, Ivana. Thanks for joining. Now that we have just a couple of minutes before we wrap, I would like to say hello to our MVPs. If they could just say hi to the team, motivate us, let us know what do you do as MVPs in community. Syed, are you there?
No, Said is not there, I see.
Lahiru?
Hello, hi, I'm here.
Hey. Please tell us a bit about yourself and how's your journey so far with UiPath?
So my journey with UiPath is really interesting. Every day there's something interesting and something new to learn. As a UiPath MVP, I have been involved in a lot of things that are really interesting, and that has been a big help to the community as well, based on the feedback I got. So I will be keeping on doing those contributions as usual. So that's how the life goes with me.
Cool. Again, and thanks so much for joining today as well. There are a couple of questions on the chat bot. I think Ivana is picking them already. But Nidhi has a question on machine learning in AI Fabric. Shashank or Sankar, if you are still around, if you would want to pick this up, please.
Sorry, can you come again, Tejas?
There's a question from Nidhi, which is, do we have any predefined ML model to extract data from unstructured email body in AI Fabric? Is this something out of the box? Do we have something like that? Unstructured email body algorithm.
So what exactly, Nidhi, if you can speak up, what exactly do you want to extract out of email?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tejas, and hi, Shashank. So for most of the requirements in the process, what I see nowadays is that we have unstructured email bodies. So for example, when we are automating finances process, so there's a too much to and fro of the emails, and in the email body, we get the invoice numbers, right? So if you want to, process particular invoice number, then you get this particular invoice number in the email body instead of in some standardized format. Again, for example, when we are doing the IT automations, we get incident numbers and the description in the email body again, right? And yeah, I've seen one more scenario where, the cybersecurity automation, where the port numbers and the host names were written in the email body, and we have to extract it. So in this particular case, we are mostly using regex extractors and all. We are putting string manipulations, and we are trying to standardize this. But is there any predefined ML model that can help us in standardizing this particular thing?
Okay, so it's kind of a named entity, which is either invoice number or a ticket number or something like that, which you want to extract. Am I understanding it correct?
Yes, Shashank.
Okay, so yeah, we are actually working on some of these NLP models to be included there. So stay tuned. You should expect to see some more content coming out from that side. So in terms of the language related models, we have some models around language comprehension and language understanding, but the extraction is a little different kind of model. So we are working on it and figuring out how do we expose the connection or the extraction input output through these models so that it's easy to use. So we have this in our roadmap. So you will get to see that soon.
Completely understand. Thanks, Shashank.
Yeah, but if these are coming as attachments, obviously you can then use document understanding flows to download the attachment from email and then extract the documents like that.
Yes, I understand. I mean, it is easy to apply a document understanding on images or the PDFs, but when it comes to the email body, then yeah, I'm
Yeah,
looking
so
forward
yeah,
some more ML models. Yeah.
yep, yeah, that's why I say it's a little different problem which we are figuring out how is the what's the best way to give it to our users so that they don't have to spend a lot of time training such model, because again
Yes.
it's very specific use cases, like some use cases you want to extract invoice, some you want to extract some other kind of information. So yeah, so that's it's in discussion. We are figuring out. We should have something soon in future.
Okay. That's good
Just
to
a
hear.
note, Nidhi. Yeah, just to add to this, please be aware that one of the, let's say, engineering and framework support things that we're working on next year is text-only support. So if you will have the email body, you will be able to pass it through the entire framework without requiring a base document for it, right? So that's one thing that we're going to work with. So for example, if a regular expression-based extractor would work for your case, you would be able to apply it, right?
Yes.
Or any such scenarios.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for the update, Hannah.
Also, I mean, the workaround brains would work in such a way that I would take a screenshot and then pass it on to document understanding. but yeah, I will just do that for POC and not implementation.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks for all your questions. Thanks for participation. The toss is done. I think people are already on the field, so I will let you go. Before I wrap and before I thank everybody once again, I have a question on DevCon vouchers and T-shirts. If you were on DevCon, we did give away 100 vouchers for certification. UiPath professional certification, and some cool bright colored T-shirts that we exclusively built for DevCon. We ran that raffle on the same day while we were speaking, and a robot picked up the winners, and there's been an email that has already been sent to these winners. Unfortunately, we will not be able to display the names because of legal reasons, but yes, the email has already gone. Vouchers and T-shirt links have been sent. Once again, thank you so much. It was, as usual, amazing to be here. We'll look forward to meet you in many more sessions we have planned specifically for products and specific parts of regions. Yeah. Thanks so much again. I will see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, team.